The exhaustion was bone deep, a weight that pressed down on every muscle, every thought. My shift at the diner had dragged on far longer than usual, plates clattering, grease sizzling, customers barking orders until the clock ticked past midnight. I'd barely had a moment to breathe, let alone sit down. When I finally clocked out, my apron stuffed into my bag and my sneakers squeaking against the tiled floor, I glanced at my phone. 12:17 a.m. Damn it. The last bus had roared off 10 minutes ago, leaving me stranded in the flickering glow of the diner's neon sign. I rubbed my eyes, the sting of fatigue blurring my vision, and weighed my options. Two paths lay before me, the long, winding route along the main road, safe but a grueling 30-minute trek, or the shortcut through Crestwood Park. I hesitated, my breath fogging in the chilly night air. Park wasn't exactly a haven after dark. Everyone in town knew the stories: muggings, shady figures lurking in the shadows, the kind of place you avoided unless you had no choice. But my legs ached, my head throbbed, and the promise of my bed called to me like a siren song. 30 extra minutes felt like an eternity. It'll be fine, I told myself, hitching my bag higher on my shoulder. Just keep your head down, walk fast, and don't stop for anything. With a shaky exhale, I made my choice and stepped into the park. The atmosphere shifted the moment I crossed the threshold. The air grew colder, sharper, carrying the earthy scent of damp leaves and pine. Tall trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches weaving a canopy that swallowed the moonlight, casting the path in patches of inky darkness. My footsteps echoed against the cracked pavement, a lonely rhythm in the stillness. I gripped the straps of my bag tighter, my knuckles whitening, and quickened my pace. The park was eerily quiet. No crickets, no rustling leaves, just the faint hum of the distant streetlights I'd left behind. Every shadow seemed to shift and stretch, playing tricks on my tired mind. I shook it off, focusing on the faint glow of the exit on the far side. Almost there, I whispered to myself. Just keep going. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not mine. Behind me. The sound was subtle at first, a soft scuff against the ground, but it grew louder, more deliberate. My pulse stuttered, a cold sweat prickling along my spine. I stole a quick glance over my shoulder, trying to keep my movements casual, unpanicked. 3 men. They walked too close together, their strides too relaxed, too purposeful. Hoodies shadowed their faces, but I could feel their eyes on me, heavy and unyielding. My stomach twisted into a knot. Stay calm, I chanted silently, forcing my legs to move faster. Just keep walking. Don't look back again. Hey, sweetheart. The voice cut through the night, low and taunting, dripping with something that made my blood run cold. My heart slammed against my ribcage, drowning out every other sound. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat had closed up, my breath catching in short, shallow bursts. I fixed my gaze ahead, willing the exit to get closer, praying they'd lose interest. Where are you headed? Need some company? Another voice, higher pitched, followed by a snicker that sent a shiver racing down my spine. They were closing the distance. I could hear it in the rhythm of their steps, the rustle of their clothes. My fingers tightened around my bag until my nails dug into my palms. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to bolt for the trees and take my chances, but logic held me back. Running would make it a chase. And I knew deep down I wouldn't outrun them. Not after a 12-hour shift. Not with legs that felt like lead. I felt a shift in the air, a presence too close. One of them reached out, his shadow stretching across the path ahead of me, his fingers brushing the edge of my jacket. And then it happened. A deep, guttural growl ripped through the silence, a sound so primal it stopped my heart for a split second. A blur of motion exploded from the shadows to my left. A flash of fur, a glint of bared teeth. A beast emerged from the darkness, massive and fierce, planting itself between me and the men like a wall of muscle and fury. It was him. The stray dog I'd been feeding behind the diner for weeks. The one I'd nicknamed in my head but never dared say out loud. The one my boss, Mr. Grady, had chewed me out for wasting scraps on when he caught me sneaking leftovers to the alley. "You're not running a damn shelter," he barked, his face red as he waved a spatula at me. But I couldn't help it. There was something about the dog, those amber eyes, that quiet dignity despite his matted fur and skinny frame, that tugged at me. I'd leave bits of burger, scraps of fries, anything I could spare, and he'd always be there waiting, tail wagging just enough to let me know he appreciated it. I wasn't supposed to care. But I did. And now here he was. He stood tall, his hackles raised, his body rigid with tension. His ears flattened against his skull, and his lips peeled back to reveal a snarl that vibrated through the air like rolling thunder. His growl was a warning, a promise, and it sent a jolt of awe through me even as I stood frozen, my breath caught in my throat. The dim light caught the sheen of his fur, dark and patchy but somehow majestic in that moment, and his eyes burned with a fierce protectiveness I'd never seen before. One of the men swore under his breath, stumbling back a step. "Shit. That thing looks vicious. Come on, man, let's go." "It's not worth it," another muttered, his voice tight with unease. I could hear the shuffle of their retreat, the scuff of sneakers against pavement as they backed away, their bravado crumbling under the weight of that unrelenting growl. Within seconds, they melted into the darkness, their footsteps fading until the park was silent again. My legs gave out. I sank to my knees right there on the cold path, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold onto my bag. My chest heaved as I gulped down air, the adrenaline crashing through me like a tidal wave. I pressed a hand to my face, feeling the dampness of tears I hadn't realized I'd shed. The world spun for a moment, the edges blurring, until a soft nudge against my arm brought me back. It was him. The dog. His growl had faded, replaced by a low, gentle whine as he pressed his nose to my elbow. Those amber eyes, once fierce and wild, now softened with something almost tender. He stepped closer, his rough fur brushing my hand, and his tail gave a slow, hesitant wag. "You," my voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "You saved me." He tilted his head slightly, as if he understood, and sat beside me, his warmth a stark contrast to the chill seeping into my bones. Tears burned my eyes again, spilling over as the weight of what had almost happened, what could have happened, crashed down on me. I didn't let myself finish the thought. Instead, I reached out, my fingers trembling as they sank into his fur. It was coarse and tangled, speckled with dirt, but it felt like a lifeline. "Thank you," I breathed, my words shaky but fierce. "Thank you." He leaned into my touch, his head resting against my arm, and for a moment we just sat there, two weary souls in the middle of a park that had nearly swallowed me whole. The fear still lingered, a bitter aftertaste, but his presence dulled its edge. I wiped my face with my sleeve, steadying my breathing, and looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't just a stray anymore. He was something more. "Come with me," I whispered, my voice raw with emotion. "Please. I can't leave you out here." He didn't hesitate. When I pushed myself to my feet, my legs wobbly but determined, he stood too, his eyes never leaving mine. I started walking, slower now, the adrenaline fading into a heavy exhaustion, and he followed, his steps steady and sure beside me. Park exit loomed ahead, and beyond it, the familiar glow of my street. We didn't speak, how could we? But there was an understanding, a quiet pact forged in the shadows. That night, he followed me home. I unlocked my apartment door with shaking hands, and he padded inside like he belonged there, his claws clicking softly against the hardwood. I gave him water, a leftover sandwich from my fridge, and an old blanket I draped over the floor. He settled onto it with a contented sigh, his eyes half closed but still watching me as I sank onto my couch, too wired to sleep yet too tired to move. I named him Shadow, because in my darkest moment, when the world had closed in and hope had slipped through my fingers, he'd been there, a silent guardian born from the night itself. He didn't leave after that. And I didn't want him to. Shadow became my shadow, a constant presence at my side, a reminder that sometimes salvation comes on four legs and speaks in growls instead of words. Every time I walk past that park now, I feel a shiver, an echo of that night. But then I look at Shadow, curled up on my rug or waiting by the door with that same quiet loyalty, and the fear fades. He changed my life forever, and I'll spend the rest of mine making sure he knows it.